All right, all right, all right. I am Jeff Townsend from Jeff Townsend Media, and I am super excited about this new podcast, The Austin Aries Show. Yes, Austin Aries, the one and only, but we're going to go digging in deeper than that. The character you know is Austin Aries. We're going to learn a whole lot more about him. With that being said, man, I'm super excited to do this podcast with you.
You said you're super excited, but you didn't sound super excited. Where's the energy, Jeff? I know it's been a long day. You've had a busy day. You got what, 3 kids?
I've got 3 kids, yep.
3 kids. Probably tuckered you out. But yes, it's the Austin Aries Show, and I'm your host.
The Austin Aries
Austin Aries. My the man that's running the traffic for me, Jeff Townsend, the podcast godfather, if you will. Is that right? Right?
Sure, I'll take it, yeah.
Okay, we'll go with that.
Kind of that guiding light to some people, maybe.
And,
I don't know.
I'm Austin Aries. I mean, I'm not really Austin Aries. That's a fictional wrestling character, right? My real name's Daniel, and on this show, while it's going to be called the Austin Aries Show, we're going to get a glimpse into the man behind Austin Aries, which is me, and we're going to have a lot of fun. And yeah, I'm excited, and I actually sound excited, not like you, who sounded like he just drank a bottle of Benadryl and then said, I'm really excited for this. Here's my friend, Austin Aries.
No, it's Duster, man. No, I'm just kidding. No, so we've been talking about doing this podcast for a while, but why was it important for you to do it, man? Like you just said, to get into, like, is it just to kind of like express your feelings on things, or people to get to know you more, or all the above?
Well, you know, Jeff, funny thing is I've been talking about doing a podcast, or been having discussions around doing a podcast for probably about 5 years now. After I left WWE, I went and did Chris Jericho's podcast. And after I did that, actually Chris called me and asked if I wanted to do a podcast on what was going to be his network, right? So I actually went to LA and I filmed a few pilots, and but it just didn't feel right. And we had some logistical issues as far as where I was living at the time, and my head just wasn't in it, and so I kind of tabled it for the time being. And something I've thought about. Obviously, the podcast space is huge, and what it does is it really it provides us a platform to speak, to have our voice be heard. And for me, a lot of things have been said about me, a lot of things have been written about me over my career, and but nobody's really got to hear much from the man himself. So here's an opportunity for me to have a platform, sort of level the playing field, if you will, so that I have an equal voice and people can hear authentically from Dan and what he's about. And, maybe along the way, just dispel some of these rumors and myths or things that have been perpetuated through the other sources. So, it just felt like, the timing was right. You reached out to me, and you obviously have a long history in the podcast space. You've been doing this, 14 years, if I'm not mistaken?
Over 15 now.
Yeah, in the podcast world. And so we had a good conversation, and I thought you'd be a good man because, the one thing for me, I can talk, but I can't do all the technical stuff, right? And that was always for me the difficulty of doing my own podcast, was doing all the back end stuff. And obviously having someone of your caliber who's got the experience doing this, and I think it'll be a good compliment. And you're a wrestling fan also, so we'll definitely be talking about some wrestling on the podcast. But we're going to be talking about a lot of other things too. So it should be fun.
Yeah. Like you said, I've been podcasting for quite a while. Just quick introduction. I started out doing it in my college dorm as a freshman with my roommate.
And now you're in your closet.
And now I'm in a homemade studio closet. Yes. It's
like the Jeffersons.
Much better though.
You're moving on up.
I'm moving on up. Yeah. I used to start out with them little, do you remember them stick mics that used to come with the computer?
Yep.
Real, real skinny. Yeah. Awful equipment. It's amazing how much podcasting's grown. And obviously I've been into a lot of different podcasts, but wrestling podcasts really for quite a while now, going back to really when Jim Cornette started his. So then Bruce Pritchard, Conrad Thompson.
Love Jim Cornette. I'm
excited. Yeah. He's a great guy.
Love Jim Cornette. Yeah.
He loves you too.
Big love fest there between me and Jim.
Yeah. What did he say? That you're a miserable person? And you didn't deny that either.
Professional malcontent miserable person. Teeny tiny turnip eating man, I think's my favorite though.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
Which I've
Wow,
actually,
that's epic.
to my recollection, I don't think I've ever actually had turnips. But it's almost, it almost pushed me to try some just to see if I like them. Maybe I would.
Yeah. I know what I'm doing when I get off this recording here.
Yeah. But yeah, no,
But no.
Jim said that about me. And, you know, to be fair, and hey, I'm pretty transparent at that period of time in my life and in my career when me and Jim were working together. Wasn't the best time of my life right there. Some, you know, personal stuff going on that bled over into the professional stuff. And yeah, I probably wasn't at my all-time happiest, you know, and so unfortunately that was the case, and that was the experience Jim had with me. And but yeah, it's okay. We're all allowed our opinions. I always say, you know, other people's opinion of me, that's their problem. It's not mine. I can't control that, and nor am I trying to. So I got to be who I am, and sometimes, you know, sometimes my filter is a little bit lacking, and I say things out loud you shouldn't say, but I'll take the good with the bad. And at the end of the day, everybody can decide for themselves what their opinion is of me. And that's their opinion, and they're allowed to have it.
Actually, by the time this comes out, just a little disclosure for you, I guess. I'm gonna release in the trailer form that first 5 minutes of the conversation we'd recorded about what you've been up to since you've been out of the wrestling scene.
Sure.
As far as on television. So
Yeah.
it'll be under a trailer, the podcast trailer. So and I'll make sure to get it on YouTube as well. That will kind of be a quick recap of what you've been doing. Obviously we're doing this to kind of go into depth more of why we're doing this and various other things. But yeah, in the previous episode trailer, I do share that conversation with what you've been doing over the last couple years.
Yeah, and that will be actually the next episode that comes out, right? From a timeline standpoint, yeah. So that'll be.
But I'm going to release
episode.
Some of it in a trailer,
sure.
Yeah.
They're called a tease, a little bit of a tease,
a teaser.
Yeah.
We'll call it a teaser, yeah,
a teaser. So,
but man, you've been cutting back a little bit, but obviously that's still how you make a living, wrestling. But you've been in like Mexico, man. You've been traveled. Mexico. You were overseas for quite a while when I first spoke to you. So You've kind of been on this journey of finding out who you really are post wrestling. And you're kind of to me, it seems like you're a different person than you were 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Not a different person, maybe a different perspective. I guess that's a better way to word it.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely feel different than I was 3-4 years ago. Right. Yeah, I've done a lot of traveling. I was in Mexico for a year, living down there. I went recently to Saudi Arabia and wrestled. That was an interesting experience. Spent some time in Spain. I enjoyed my time there. And now back here in Florida for the time being. I head to Canada on February 17th through the 21st to do some wrestling for Danny Duggan, a guy that I've known for over 20 years now. Winnipeg was one of the first places I went to wrestle outside of Minnesota. So it'd be fun to get back there and put the tights back on for a few days and have some fun.
But, are they going to fit?
Oh yeah, they'll fit. I got some new ones. I'm looking forward to. It might be singlet time though. I've been telling myself as I'm creeping close to 45 here, it might be time for the singlet. You know, that's the transition for a lot of us wrestlers as we get older. You start covering up more and more, you know, when you get out to the ring. So we'll see. I've been thinking about the singlet.
Might have to get me one made. Whoever's doing them for you. I would like to record every podcast I do in a singlet. So we'll talk about that later. I'll get a reference from you.
I mean, I think you're gonna have to do this now that you brought it up. We're gonna actually make this a reality.
Yeah, I think so. I would do it.
So, you're going to do it, yeah.
I'm gonna do it now. I just signed up for it.
We're gonna write that in the contract, I think.
Yeah. I know you have a pen handy at all times, so I'm sure you're noting that down. So, man, creative controls, obviously, a lot of other podcasts I do kind of write an outline and stuff, but the ball is completely in your hands and the court is yours, and we're going at it here. So I'll let you lead us off.
Yeah, well, I thought for this first episode, it would just be kind of fun to talk about again, you know, who I am a little bit, my background. I I imagine most people listening to this are going to come from the world of wrestling, but some of my fans and some people I've connected with over the years come from outside the world of pro wrestling. So I think it'll be interesting to just kind of talk about that a little bit, and then just talk about you. Again, your background. Why did you get into podcasting? And then again, why a podcast and what's this podcast going to be about, right? And so that was really, I thought, a good way to kind of lead this off. And I also think that I hate. So I did a Chris Van Vliet interview once, like 2 hours, man.
I've watched, yep
2 hours. Whew. And that's hard to go back and watch because I was going through a lot of stuff at that time. But
you're an angry son of a bitch, man.
I had a lot of pent up frustration and anger in me at that time that I was looking for a place to release it, and it just happened to be all over Chris Van Vliet. So, but the point of that is I don't want to make these episodes 2 hours long or even an hour long. I think that 45 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes, that sweet spot, right, to keep people engaged and just get enough and keep them looking forward to the next episode. So, and yeah, I have a lot of different interests, right? I don't actively watch professional wrestling week in and week out. It's, it's something I've done for 20 years, but I wouldn't necessarily classify myself as a huge fan of it, if that makes sense, as far as what I do in my spare time. Obviously, I keep up enough to be informed what's going on in my industry, but I don't have cable, I don't have a television, so I don't really watch wrestling on TV. The wrestling I do watch tends to be the stuff I grew up watching, like the wrestling I like, which is the old Crockett stuff from the 80s if I'm going to go watch some wrestling. But, I'm into sports. I grew up an athlete, a baseball player, went to college for that. So I do follow football and baseball and basketball, from Wisconsin originally. So Wisconsin, if you couldn't hear it in the accent. So we'll probably talk a little bit about Wisconsin sports here and there. And then I've got a lot of just, obviously I have a lot of interesting friends in the wrestling industry, which in and of itself is just this weird community of people. But I've made a lot of cool and interesting friends outside of wrestling that come from a lot of different backgrounds. And, I hope to kind of have a revolving door of frequent guests to come on here and just, talk about different stuff, mental health, right? Spirituality, medicine, current events, just all sorts of different things like that. So as we get into this, we won't have a guest necessarily every week. But a lot of times we're going to try to bring a third party on here and have some, some interesting conversations, right? I like to stimulate thought. I like to make people think about things. I don't like to tell people what to think. I just like to pose questions that makes them think, because, a lot of times we go through life just kind of taking the things that are fed to us at face value without really contemplating them. Or also, we spend a lot of our life being I call it an unconscious consumer, right? We live in this world of consumerism, but a lot of times we're on autopilot and we're consuming things, whether it's the food we eat, whether it's what we listen to, what we watch, who we listen to, and we don't really do it consciously, right? We're not really super aware of why we're consuming the things we're consuming. So I just like to, pose the type of questions that makes us think a little bit, right?
Yeah, and I think it's for people that have just associated with wrestling, it's this whole fact that you're a whole person behind you, the real person behind you, and you do have these thoughts that are beyond wrestling, beyond pro wrestling. You have these things that you're passionate about that aren't just wrestling. So I think it's exciting that people will get to hear about some of them.
Yeah, and some people call them controversial, right? Because in this day and age, if you don't subscribe to a lot of times one of two different perspectives, then somehow that's controversial, right? It's you're either pro or anti, you're blue or you're red, everything's black and white. And if you try to settle in some type of shade of gray, a lot of people have a problem with that. And, I hope for this podcast is we can bring different opinions on here. We can have civil discourse, even with people who don't think like us or have a different opinion. We don't have to feel like we need to be censored. We don't have to necessarily feel like we need to be, politically correct. Don't have to worry about being canceled, right? You can't be canceled if you don't play along, right? And so, I want people to be able to come on here and be free to speak their mind, to tell their story, to ask questions, maybe uncomfortable questions, and try to get to some answers, even if they're uncomfortable answers too. So, it should be an interesting ride, and hopefully, people will come on the journey and feel like they're getting a little something out of this time we spend together.
I'll go ahead and knock some of my stuff out because nobody cares about that, but I know you want me to do it.
Yeah. Who are you? Who are you, Jeff Townsend?
It was in college, so I actually started podcasting because it was a school project, and we did in podcast form, and then I just kind of kept doing it from there, and I started doing a bunch of local stuff. I still do a lot of local stuff. I work for a local media company.
And when you say
Wish
local,
TV.
where's local for you?
It's Indiana now. So
Okay.
I work for an Indianapolis news company, Wish TV, Circle City Broadcasting. I do a bunch of different stuff. I formed a media company of my own, and I have about 7 different podcasts that I'm involved in.
Yeah.
So
You
I'm
even
a
have
pretty busy guy.
podcasts about podcasts, if I'm not mistaken.
I have, yeah, you're right. I'm on Twitter at podcast_father. But no, I'm pretty involved in the podcasting community, and I have a lot of different things that I do to try to help new podcasters out.
Isn't that crazy when you think about it? Like podcasting is become such a thing that you have a podcast about podcasting. Yeah. And it's successful because there's so many people trying to get in the podcast world that a podcast about how to become a good podcaster, there's some value there and people are going to listen to that. It's amazing to me. I talked to a guy, another guy that was talking about, asking me about doing a podcast, and he did podcasts about Frisbee golf. You ever played Frisbee golf? You ever do Frisbee golf up there? Yeah. And I was like, really? There's a podcast about Frisbee golf? Like how many episodes can you have, right? Like, what do you talk about? But that's the crazy world of podcasting. There's so many different niches, and they're all being filled with this medium. And I think it's really cool. It's really cool. So you're in Indiana now, right? Still?
I'm in Indiana now. I have 3 kids, keeping busy, and basically podcasting all night, like we are right now.
Yeah.
Disclosure, right? It's late. It's 11 p.m. Eastern.
Gotta wait till the kids go to
mornings
bed.
of the hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta wait till the kids go to bed. I stay up night and I podcast. So I have a couple wrestling things going on now. Obviously launching this one with you first, then also Bill DeMont, former trainer.
Yeah.
WWE.
Hugh Morris.
Morris, exactly.
General Rection.
He actually brought, of course that was discussed. That was, but so like you said, longtime wrestling fan, don't really have a lot of people that I can talk to wrestling about. They don't I don't know anybody that necessarily cares about it that much.
That was my whole childhood, basically. Anyone who grew up watching wrestling in the 80s, before like the Monday Night Wars and the Attitude Era, when it really became part of pop culture, to be a wrestling fan, you found the one other guy that liked wrestling in your school, and that was it. There wasn't many people you could talk wrestling about, right? So I remember actually in college, I was in college when wrestling got super hot. Monday Night Wars and Suck It and DX and Know Your Role. And so I was working at a liquor store and we did deliveries. Like, talk about it.
Wow.
Right? College liquor store that delivers. And we even had a truck, so we'd deliver kegs to house
parties. I didn't know
parties.
You could do that. Wow.
It's crazy, right? So I remember a few nights, Monday night, and I'm delivering kegs to some house party where they've got wrestling on and everyone's just acting a fool and crotch chopping and suck it and this. And I was so salty, right? Because I'm like, these are like such bandwagon jumper fans. Like, I'll bet you if I threw some names at them, they wouldn't have a clue. Like, do they know who Don Kernodle is? I'll bet you they don't. Bet you they don't know who
Bruiser.
Yeah, I bet you they don't know who Ernie Ladd is or Jimmy Valiant, right? Like, it's just, it's like, oh yeah, they all know, they know The Rock and they know Stone Cold, but they're not real wrestling fans like I am. So, but that was it growing up, before it became popular. But yeah, well, here's hopefully going to be an outlet for you to talk a little bit of wrestling, and we'll bring some good guests on where you can talk a little bit about wrestling and you can share your uninformed opinion as a fan, and maybe You could even start a newsletter and share your uninformed opinion, and people would pay you for it. Who knows?
Can I call it journalism?
You sure can.
Sure. Sweet.
Yeah,
For
absolutely.
those wondering what we're referring to, Dave Meltzer has me blocked on Twitter. He did not like my key demo jokes, I guess. Blocked me.
Really?
Well.
Dave Meltzer has you blocked on Twitter?
Yeah, I think, well, okay. So there were two tweets, right? The first one was, and I don't remember what the match was, but I said if it was in the Tokyo Dome, it would have been 7 stars.
Okay.
I can see where that was kind of like a stinger. I get it. Then I tweeted, Dave Meltzer says I'm in the key demo. And that got me blocked.
Wow.
So, no going back now, right?
I mean, I guess it's just, you didn't say anything like disrespectful or, I mean, you didn't call him a name or weren't rude. I mean, you know.
Yeah.
So, but that's all right. You know what?
Dave, if you're out there listening, for some reason, which I'm sure Austin Aries here would say, don't continue to pay Dave Meltzer, but I still pay for your newsletter, Dave.
Wait, so you pay for he blocked you, but you still pay for his newsletter?
Yeah, I know, right? This is like this is like a life-changing moment here. I got to think about the way I'm living.
You didn't disclose this before we made this agreement to do this podcast together, because if I had known that, I might have had a different opinion about doing this podcast with you, Jeff Townsend.
Well, see, I like wrestling so much, I would read anything, even if I agreed with it or not. That's pretty bad, huh?
Yeah. I don't have a strong opinion on Dave Meltzer one way or the other, to be honest. And I certainly don't hate on the hustle, right? I mean,
Yep.
Think what you want, and there's many different opinions. But one thing I'll always say is, he has dedicated his life and a enormous amount of time and energy into covering the thing that I do for a living. And, without people like that, there would be a void. There would be something missing in this pro wrestling community. So, we all play important roles, and me and Dave's relationship kind of got off on the wrong foot initially. Back when I was with TNA the first time, he misreported something, and I'm sure it was fed to him by the company, so he reported it, but it wasn't factually correct, and it painted the picture differently than reality. And I was pretty upset about that because I'd never spoken to him before. So I remember I got his phone number from Gabe Sapolsky. I was actually in the Ring of Honor office when I read this, and I called him up. And, as I had a tendency to do in my younger years, I was pretty fired up and pretty fiery and probably cursed him out a little bit. And
I'm sure you did.
Well, I just said, listen, if you want to report shit about me, call me. I'll tell you the truth.
You got to go to the source. That's journalism.
Go to the at least give the source the opportunity to give you the other version of the story, so you can figure out what it was. And basically, the story was this, right? So I got suspended. The first time I got suspended at TNA at the time was I was working for Ring of Honor full time, and they wanted us to come down on a Friday. Actually, on a Saturday, they wanted us to come down a day early for the pay-per-view because they were worried about a snowstorm, right? And so I got the call at 2 p.m. from TNA to say, hey, we want you all to come down, for this because of the snowstorm. And I just said, hey, I'm on my way to the Ring of Honor show, right? I did Friday night. Now I got the show Saturday, and I'll fly down tomorrow. And
'cause that's who you worked for.
That was who was paying my bills. And I was just kind of a part-time per appearance guy for TNA at the time. But Ring of Honor, I was running the school. That was my full-time gig. And it's just also not how I do business. I don't know shows. I don't, last minute. And so it was 2 p.m, the day of the show, that we were told to basically skip the Ring of Honor show and come down to Florida. And I declined, and I stayed and did which was the first show was called Unscripted, because half the guys got pulled from the cards. So Gabe had to come up with something on the fly, and that was called Unscripted. And anyway, long story short, when Dave reported it, he said that we were told the day before, we were told on Friday that TNA wanted us to come down, which to me is a big difference. If you tell somebody on a Friday that we want you to come down Saturday, and Gabe has 24 hours notice to rework the card, maybe I consider it. I probably still wouldn't have done it. I was not going to screw over Ring of Honor, but the reality is I was told literally at 2:00 on Saturday that they wanted me to catch a flight in 3 hours and be down there, and I just felt like it just painted a different picture, right? Like that we were given advance notice when there was no advance notice. Nobody was given advance notice, and anyway, that was a story, not a big deal, And at that time, still learning how the pro wrestling media worked and understanding that whole landscape. And so it's all good. I think the nicest thing Dave Meltzer's ever said about me was, if I was 6 feet tall, people would talk about me like I was Shawn Michaels, which is a nice backhanded compliment. Because I'm not 6 feet tall, if anybody's wondering. Yeah.
Yeah. That's like it's like an attaboy with a bad boy with it. But anyways, yeah, no, I know what you're saying. So yeah, but Uncle Dave and I, hopefully we can rekindle our relationship one day. Because I've always supported him. I mean, I don't have a problem with him, but maybe a couple tweets, maybe the key demo offended him. Yeah.
I mean, it shouldn't have. But you know what? So there's different philosophies when it comes to Twitter and blocking people, right? And I don't know that I've really settled on what philosophy that I believe in firmly. But, one philosophy is just, hey, like, this is my Twitter feed. This is my energy. And if it's not providing something of positive value, then I just get rid of it and I don't have to see it. Right. And I don't worry about it and I move on and out of sight, out of mind, and then there's other people who feel like, well, the minute you block someone, you're giving them what they wanted a lot of times because they just wanted attention. So now they know that they got to you, and somehow that makes them the winner of the whole fiasco. So I can see both sides. For me, I've had periods where I've kind of gone both ways. So I've had periods where, if I just didn't want to see it and I didn't want to see it, I just blocked it. But now more recently, like, I just don't really give a shit, and I don't spend enough time on Twitter to really care what people are saying. And I do believe that for a lot of the people on there, I'd rather just not give them any of my energy, blocking them, responding to them, liking their whatever, it's the old, if the tree falls in the middle of the forest and no one's there to hear it, did it make a sound, right? Like, did it happen? And so I feel like sometimes just ignore them. Don't even give them the energy whatsoever. Just move on with your day.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever blocked anybody. Cause I'm with you there. That's acknowledging that I paid attention to them or acknowledging them, which typically I don't. Let me ask you a question though. So
please,
who do you talk to the most still from who you worked with in the wrestling industry?
Who do I talk to the most? Probably Kenny King. I talk to Kenny King quite a bit. I consider him a friend, outside the wrestling business. I talked to
Tough enough Kenny.
Tough enough Kenny. Yeah.
Yep.
I talked to a few of the guys I trained, like Rhett Titus, Ernie Osiris, Grizzly Redwood, some guys I trained at the Ring of Honor School. We keep up. I talked to Prince Nana from time to time. Talk to Roderick Strong, here and there. And then, it's funny that when you say talk to, it's like, do you mean like on the phone or just even passing messages back and forth? Because, there's guys you'll message here and there randomly. But yeah, those are the guys that I probably keep up with the most. So, and I will say too, and I guess we'll just touch on this because obviously we had a big loss in the wrestling world recently with the passing of Jay Briscoe, which was tragic and obviously unexpected. And I just got back not that long ago from the funeral. I went up to Delaware and just to pay my respects. And man, it was fucking amazing, right? It was the strength and resolve of the Pugh family. Jamin Pugh is his real name, right? Jay Briscoe, his stage name. Mama and Papa Briscoe, Mark, his brother, just his whole family. It amazed me to see the strength and resolve that they all showed while we were there. They're so committed to their faith and their belief. They're very religious people, but their conviction is so strong that it's allowed them to really take this tragedy in stride and really believe that God has a plan and that you can't change God's plans. And it gave them a level of peace and strength that was remarkable. And it seemed like they were in some ways more concerned how everybody else was holding up as opposed to how they were. And, obviously it was one of those situations, and I heard it a lot that day, where we all hated why we were there, but what we were a part of was so beautiful. The impact that Jay had on people, not just within the wrestling community, but within his community of Laurel. I mean, he was like
the whole family's pretty big in the community, right? I mean, they're pretty well known and very involved. Yeah,
very involved. The gymnasium where they had the service is named after his grandfather, right? I mean, so they've been cornerstones of that community for a long time. And I'm telling you, they completely filled the gymnasium and had 2 overflow rooms because it was literally a sellout, right? Like Jay Briscoe sold out Laurel,
yeah.
And it was just an amazing experience. Saw so many people that I haven't seen for 5-10 years within the wrestling community. And that was the one thing, was like, you realize, like, what a big dysfunctional family we really are, and how special that is. And yeah, we all hated why we were there, but we were so so grateful to be there and to see so many people and give people hugs and tell them we loved them and kind of share that. And so, just a lot of emotions, and again, not where we wanted to be for the reason we were there, but it was an amazing, beautiful experience. And, just sending my love to the whole Pugh family, and also just, man, a tip of my cap to just the amazing strength and resolve that they showed through this and continue to show moving forward. So sort of touch on that a little bit. So it was,
such a underrated, I mean, wrestling wise, such an underrated tag team. So freaking good. Easily one of the best tag teams I've ever seen. I mean, they're incredible. And
yeah, I mean, if they're not in the top 5 of all time, then I have to question, your opinion when it comes to pro wrestling. And I think that just from a wrestling standpoint, was here they're brothers, like so identical in so many ways, yet completely different, like different styles in the ring, different styles when it came to cutting promos, and each of them could stand on their own, and obviously Jay showed that by winning, a couple of world championships as a singles wrestler. So yeah, I mean, just a bond of connection and longevity. To me, they're up there in that top 5 of all time. No doubt.
There's a feel-good moment here. Is there like a story you can share that's awesome from, I'm sure, because you guys are around each other quite a bit.
Yeah. So here was one of the funny things that we also said this weekend. As we all shared stories amongst each other, we all said, man, we could never tell these stories publicly, right? Like, I mean, we couldn't. Listen, first of all, a lot of current day wrestling fans need to understand that 20 years ago, 15 years ago, the wrestling world was different. The world as a whole was different. And what was acceptable and not acceptable was different, right? And so, a lot of the shenanigans and things that we got ourselves into 15 plus years ago as younger gentlemen, before we had families, before we had kids and families and matured, are things that, quite frankly, I wouldn't dare repeat here because in this cancel culture, it'd be opening up a can of worms that doesn't need to be opened up. So the funny part was, as we shared a lot of these stories, we realized that we could only share them amongst each other, but we couldn't necessarily like share them in a public forum. So yeah, I think that is a story in and of itself. What was kind of funny, but yeah, I just listen. I've been in the ring with those guys as partners, as competitors, and one thing about them was passion and
Yeah.
intensity. And they're gonna bring that out of you, and that's something I've always tried to do in the ring, right? Like bring a level of passion and intensity that would force my opponent to have to step his game up if he wanted to survive, if he wanted to thrive, and those guys, were the ultimate measuring stick when it came to tag teams to see exactly where you stood, and but the thing about Jay was, and this was said, he was a man's man, which is a man that other men look up to and respect. And, he had this hard, rough exterior, but man, when you got to the inside, he had a huge heart, he really did. And, loved everybody, no matter their differences, where they came from, what they were about. And that really, that's a reflection of, again, their faith, and how they try to, do as Jesus would do, as they would say, and that's to love unconditionally and meet people where they're at, not where you want them to be.
Well, yeah, and they're obviously in need. If possible, people should help if they can, and I'll try to get a link up in the description.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wanted to make sure that, and obviously thoughts and prayers with his family.
And you could do it a couple ways.
Just him impacted.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, his two daughters, who for all things considered, were in good spirits. And yeah, you could donate money. I think it's I'm not sure what platform they're using. Go, Give, Send, or something. I'm not familiar with these. Or you go to Pro Wrestling Tees and order one of the Reach for the Sky Jay Briscoe T-shirts. All the proceeds for that will go directly to the family. 100% of the proceeds. So that's cool because it's a cool shirt, and obviously going to a good cause.
Yeah, I got mine ordered yesterday, actually. But yeah, so it was important for me to bring that up as well. Man, so Ring of Honor seems like it's just been such a huge part for yourself and all the stories you hear from individuals, maybe Bryan Danielson. Just it seems like that community there had something special that you probably didn't experience in your time in TNA, in any independent scene, or in WWE.
Yeah, well, I think that it was just, man, you talk about like catching lightning in a bottle, right? And if you go back and look, the whole idea of Ring of Honor was kind of like this indie all-star show, right? We're going to pluck the best independent talent from all over, and we're going to have them on this card. And then we're going to see out of those guys, who rises to the top. And so, you had a collection of guys that were all in similar parts of their career, like trying to be discovered, trying to take that next step, trying to make this a full-time career, wanting to be the best, wanting to get noticed. But we also had built this bond of this camaraderie because we were all working kind of as the underdogs. We weren't the WWE. We were a independent company. And so, we've always said in wrestling, the guys that we love and respect the most are the guys we hit the hardest. Those are the guys that we can go out there and put on the best show with because we know there's no ill will behind it, right? And so, and that's been true in my career, right? The guys I'm closest with outside the ring are the guys that I know that when I get in there, you can take it to that next level because we're just trying to put on a good show. There's no maliciousness, there's no ill intent. And, I think we kind of had that across the board in Ring of Honor. We were all out there trying to high tides rise all boats, right? And so the bigger we could make Ring of Honor, the better we could all be, right? The bigger we would all be. So I think it did create that family vibe and atmosphere for a lot of us. And we were all, we were all in our 20s and we're all young and growing up. That's the thing too, going back to, to Jay and Mark, it's like I've known these guys for near 20 years. You watch people literally grow up and become men, as we're doing this. We all were kids and Boys to Men. What a great band that was, huh? So yeah, I think that plays in part of that camaraderie, right? And we were only going to go as far as we went collectively a lot of times.
Yeah, like the helping hand and the dedication to helping each other, it was incredible. I still own like 15 DVDs, but I was actually lucky enough to have it on a satellite channel.
Nice.
So obviously, I sent you that video of you winning the title, and it's crazy to see, like you said, just physically even the development. But I can't even imagine, like you're saying, socially, mentally. These people have families now.
Yeah.
Well traveled.
Right. Yeah, it's like that was the beginning of a lot of our careers, and now a lot of us are starting to see the kind of end, in front of us, right? Not too distant future. So yeah, it's hard to believe sometimes. For me personally, 23 years now, I've been on this crazy pro wrestling path. But speaking of Ring of Honor DVDs, my collection is amazing. I might have probably about 80% of all the DVDs from my time I was there, right? And so a lot of these are out of print and out of stock. You can't get them anymore.
Oh yeah,
but I'm going to be looking to sell them. I'm going to look to move them to someone who probably appreciates them a little more than me. There's maybe a handful of ones that I'd probably keep for nostalgia, but I've got probably 150 of these things sitting in storage that at some point I'm going to move. I'm going to put up for sale. So, maybe we'll do it here on one of these weeks, one of these episodes. We'll do some auction or something. Maybe we'll do like a live auction for my Ring of Honor DVD collection, right?
Yeah, maybe it'll be like a few of them will be a prize or something, right? We can get creative. We can go crazy here.
Could do something like that too. Everyone likes prizes.
Yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
Definitely going to give away a few copies of my book for some prizes.
There you go. Yeah. So let's talk about that. So we touched up on wrestling, and like we said earlier, there is another episode that'll follow this. And we're not trying to step on the exact same things that we did, because just a little bit of a glimpse into the next episode. We talk a lot about identity.
Yeah.
And you give a lot of different examples of how that lined up in the timeline of your wrestling career. But we talked a little bit about the things that you're doing outside of wrestling now, because obviously that's running through your head a lot. That's something that you're really focusing on now.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I mean, obviously I know you're huge into the diet that you do. You've got some other things going on besides wrestling.
Yeah. Well, anybody who knows me, here, I'm your annoying vegan friend, right? So I've been, plant-based for over 20 years, vegan now for the last 11 years. I wrote a book about my journey called Food Fight. You can also find that at Pro Wrestling Tees if you're interested. But I started speaking about it at different events, because I realized that, there was some real impact that I could have in helping my fans change their life for the better by just sharing the things that have worked for me. Right. And so, coming up here, February 5th, which I'm trying to think we're going to drop this. We're going to drop this
the 7th. So that'll be 2 days before.
So 2 days before this, I spoke at Veg Fest in Fort Myers, and then next Sunday, I'll be speaking on the 12th. I'll be speaking at Veg Fest in Gainesville, Florida. So I just like to get out there and just talk about, again, being a plant-based athlete. Eating animals isn't a necessity; it's a choice we make. And I think for a lot of us, we think it's a necessity, like we have to do this to live or to thrive. And, over 20 years now, I'm living proof that that's not the case. Again, we become what we consume. And, one of the things that we absolutely control is what we put in our mouth, what we eat. And a lot of times it's one of the things that we think the least about, right? We're very unconscious in our consumption of food. And so, yeah, that's something I'm pretty passionate about just because I've seen the power it can have in helping change people's lives. Just tonight, before we hopped on here, I did a teaching for something called Altar Call with Ryan Blair. And, it's a bunch of masterminds who are trying to level up in their business world and their spirituality, right, and their enlightenment. And so we talked about, this component of it, right? And so one of the guys on there came and told his story about he was diagnosed type 2 diabetic, and I think it's, 30s, mid 30s, early 40s. He felt kind of ashamed and embarrassed that he kind of let himself get to this place to where he now had to start taking insulin, every day, but he converted himself to a plant-based diet. And he actually reported tonight that he went to the doctor and his markers and levels are so low that they told him that they can no longer give him insulin. He basically reversed his type 2 diabetes just by changing his diet to a plant-based diet. And that's just one example of many, right? So, from a physical health standpoint, there's benefits. I also like to talk about from the mental and the spiritual health, how that's all interconnected, right? And again, our gut health is directly correlated to our mental health. So we talk a lot about mental health, and we're going to talk a lot about mental health in the coming weeks. And it's become a big topic of conversation. And it seems like, man, a lot of people are suffering and dealing with some form of mental health. Well, again, we need to start looking at, that's tied directly to our gut health. So if we're not eating the right things, that's going to affect our mental health, and then I talk about vibration and energy, right? Everything's energy. Emotion is energy, right? So there's high vibrational emotions and there's low vibrational emotions, right? And so things like, love and happiness and laughter and, joy, like these are all high vibrational emotions. But then we talk about things like stress and depression and fear and anger and resentment and jealousy. Well, these are all low vibrational emotions, So I was asked a question, if you really think about the animals that most of our society consumes, they spend their very short life in these factory farms in nothing but low vibrational emotion. They're sad, they're depressed, they're angry, they're stressed, they're fearful, right? And so, if that's what you're consuming, if you're trapping that emotional energy in that flesh of that animal, and then you're consuming that and eating that, you're transferring that energy onto you. So how are you going to be vibrating at a high vibrational energy if you're consuming and you're nourishing your body with this low negative vibrational emotion and energy, right? So, there's different ways to think about health. There's the physical way, but there's also the mental and the emotional way, the spiritual way. And so again, you are what you eat. And are you eating the light, right? Like fruit, vegetables, or are you eating the death?
Taco Bell.
Taco Bell, which I used to love me some Taco Bell. I'm not going to lie to you, Jeff. When I moved to Philadelphia, when I got my opportunity for Ring of Honor, I moved to Philadelphia just to make it easy. And at the time I was a vegetarian and I was still learning, in the process of learning, right? And we're always learning. We never stop that process, but I was new into that journey. And so I ate a lot of Taco Bell, the 7-layer burrito, which didn't have any meat in it, but it had, cheese and sour cream and guacamole. So I remember when I didn't have a lot of money, so I was trying to find like a cheap apartment. And I remember I found this spot and it had my bank, it had my gym, and it had Taco Bell all within 5 minutes. And I said, that's the place for me. So that was, I used to eat myself a lot of Taco Bell, but not so much anymore. I've learned to do a little better, leveled up.
Seven layers of Jeff. Yeah.
You a Taco Bell guy?
Yeah. I mean, I'm victim, and that's why I'm so intrigued by this discussion, right? I find myself victimizing myself a time constraint is what I would say.
Sure.
Obviously an excuse, but yeah. So yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just not Taco Bell, but I fall
Convenience
for that too.
foods. Right. Yeah. Yeah. The thing is this, Jeff, like if you don't make time for it now, at some point, unfortunately, your body will force you to make time for it. It's not going to give you the choice, but by then it's usually too late. You know, a lot of us wait till we're behind the 8 ball before we make the change, right? Just like the gentleman tonight. He had to wait until he got type 2 diabetes before he started to change his diet and lifestyle. And for a lot of us, that's what we do. And so, you know, my hope is that, you know, I can hopefully provide some encouragement and some tidbits of knowledge on how to start that transition before your body forces you to do it, right? And not wait till it's too late. You know, we got to invest in our health. We have to invest and put, again, I always say we have three major resources: our time, our money, and our energy. And for all of us, that is divided up differently. Some of us have more money and less time. Some of us have a ton of energy and time, but no money, right? So everyone's, you know, breakdown of our resources is a little different. But you have to be willing to allocate some of your resources to the foods you eat if you expect to get anything of value back. You can't invest nothing and get something of value back. That's just not how anything in life works. So whether it's you invest more time to pay somebody else to make the food for you, right? Convenient foods, you know, whether you invest your own energy, you know, to do it yourself by start cooking yourself, you know, you invest the money to buy higher quality foods. You have to invest something when it comes to the foods you eat. And, you know, we'll talk more about this in future episodes where we can talk about how you can, you know, be efficient in allocating time and still eating well, still eating right, you know, and it's just a matter of changing our perspective a little bit. And then also, where do we put it on our list of priorities, right? And so for most of us, whether it's the money or just our time, the food ends up being the last of our priorities, right? I pay all the bills for the month, and whatever money I have left over is what I buy food with, right? I do everything else on my list of to-dos for the day, and then if I got time, that's what I do. Then I try to find some food. And it's backwards to me, man, because if you don't have your health, what do you really have? Right? What are you going to have time? What are you going to have time to do if you don't have your health? And what are you going to be solely focused on the minute you're sick? Getting healthy.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, try to get ahead of the curve a little bit. And again, small incremental changes is the way to go, you know, and a bunch of small positive changes over time adds up to big changes that make a real difference.
I'm on board, man. I'm no longer cruiserweight.
Yeah.
So I got to get...
You're 206 now.
I got it. I'm 206 now.
Yeah.
So I got to get back down under 205. I think I literally am 206 though. I think that's literally my weight when I went to the doctor last week. That's funny.
That's funny. Well, we're
not funny that I'm 206, but
no. Well, I'm gonna take this as a personal mission, and if we're gonna be spending time together every week, you know, I say within 4 weeks you're gonna be guilted into giving up some of these bad habits. You're just you're not gonna want to hear me preaching and ranting and raving to you about it. So, but ultimately, it's got to be your decision. It's got to be, you got to put the work in. You got to make the effort. And hey, you got 3 kids to do it for, if anything else, right? You want to live a healthy, long life to see them grow up to be healthy and long living too, right? So it's all about what motivates us. Got to find the motivation. What's going to be the motivational factor to make you just, you know, put that time in. So never can be too busy to nourish yourself correctly. Got to find that time.
This is a great example that moving, just going to throw it out there. This isn't like a wrestling shoot podcast, even though you will be sharing your honest opinion on things involving wrestling. But that's not what this all is. I mean, obviously, it's way more beyond that. And I look forward to continue to learn, because you're right. It is important that we really try to continue to learn every day.
Yeah. And I'm here to learn too. I said I'm never afraid to be wrong because it means I just learned something new, right? And I think a lot of people we can fall victim to our egos don't allow us to admit when we were fooled, for us to admit when we were wrong about something, so we continue to double down or move the goalposts, right? And we don't want to admit that maybe we were wrong, or maybe somebody along the way fooled us with bad information. And that's never been a concern of mine. I'm glad to be wrong because it means that I learned something new, and then I'm better for it. So, forever a student, right? Like, we're always a student. There's no finish line to this. None of us are going to become the perfect human being and do everything right and eat just the right things and say just the right things and do just the right things. That's not what it's about. It's about, I'm a big believer in constantly trying to level up, small, little incremental leveling up in all these different facets of our life. And I hope as we continue this journey, I'm able to bring some cool guests on that have helped me level up in different areas of my life, right? And hopefully they can share their knowledge with the listeners and help them do the same. So I think this feels like a good place to end this first week. What do you think?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. And I have about 5 t-shirt ideas now that I can incorporate onto my website, jefft-shirts.com.
Nice.
Continue to level up might be one of them.
Yeah.
I'm being inspired here. So but you're right. This is a good break. And I think it's also a big thing for us will be, we want to hear the engagement. We want to be able to also answer questions or suggestions or even just read people's opinions. So
100%.
We have an email we set up. It's AustinAriesShow@gmail.com.
Yep.
I'm still working on AustinAriesShow.com, and it'll have a contact form on there. But anything that if Austin wants to, if Daniel wants to, he will touch up on it. If not, then he won't. But no, we definitely want to hear that interaction, have the interaction with people that are listening to this. So I think that's important. And I did want to bring that up.
That's 100%. Like I'm not doing this for me ultimately, right? I don't really enjoy hearing myself talk. I've always had a problem watching my matches back or watching my promos. I don't like to hear myself talk. I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this in hopes that it will help somebody else, help inspire somebody else, and through that, it'll help me, right? And help me grow and help me learn. So if we're not getting feedback and we're not listening to the people that are listening to the show, then we're not doing it right, because ultimately we want to hear what people want to hear, right? I want to know like what topics interest people. I want to know what helps them, And so, you can go to AustinAriesShow@gmail.com. Send your questions, send your comments, send your concerns. Hey, tell me to fuck off. Tell me I'm a terrible human being, and you hope I never
Wouldn't be
do
the
another
first time, right?
Would be the first time. You're not going to hurt my feelings. If it makes you feel better to vent out and spew some of that negativity, hey, I'll gladly absorb it. All good. No worries here. So, cool, man. Well, this has been fun.
It's been fun.
Yeah, this is a great jumping off point, and we'll see you again next week, right?
Yeah, we'll be back with another episode next week. Yeah, absolutely. We'll deep dive into this conversation a little bit more. That's what we'll be sharing. So
we'll talk
I'm
about
excited for the journey, man.
Yeah, we'll talk about identity next week, right? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Talked about No, but it'll be an awesome episode, and I'm so friggin' excited, man, to learn more about the things that you believe in. So thanks again, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, till next week.
All right. This is Jeff Townsend. Thanks for checking out the Austin Aries Show here on YouTube. If you're enjoying the show, please subscribe to it and share it with all your friends. There are plenty more videos for you to check out in the meantime. And this content, of course, is available on all podcast listening platforms. If you want to learn more about the show, go to AustinAriesShow.com.